Good everyone. I hope you're having an amazing day. So today I'm going to talk about the table-driven trigger management and why it's important and how to use it. So before I jump into table-driven trigger management, let me talk about a non-profit starter pack because this comes at a part of a non-profit starter pack. So if you have used non-profit starter pack, then you clearly know what I'm talking about. It has tons of feature, right? So for instance, if you wanted to track pledges, recurring gifts, user-defined rollups, and other rollups out of box, right? You can use the uh, non-profit starter pack, which is also referred as NPSP, right? Um, Out of which there's one more important feature that is called as the table-driven trigger management. Table-driven trigger management is all about automation, right? So in simple terms, it is a method for managing the behavior of your nonprofit starter pack code, ensuring that things happens in the order you expect them to happen. So for instance, you have a trigger, right? You have a contact trigger in place, okay? And you have written different handler class, and you want them to happen in a specific order. You can do that using this table driven trigger management. How cool is that, right? And so, like I said, automation is one of the biggest benefit of the Salesforce. So for instance, let me give you a scenario, right? When a contact record is in Salesforce is added, updated, or deleted, we often want other things to happen automatically, right? So, for instance, update an address or a value an account. So that's what I was talking about automation. So and NPSP, right? In the short term, which is exactly what I'm going to use. It relies heavily on triggers, right? So that's why TDM is very important. It actually helps you disable a specific piece of a code if you want to do that. Build your own custom code that works in conjunction with NPSP and controls the order in which code executes. I'm going to demonstrate you everything today, and this is the most exciting part of this trigger demonstration, right? And if you remember in my last episode around a basic trigger, when I talked about trigger framework, right? It's not a good practice to build your business logic within the trigger. That's a very bad practice because think about it, right? Writing a trigger is an art, right? It's like you're writing a beautiful story inside a Salesforce because Salesforce does something and it behind, you perform an action and Salesforce does something behind the scene, right? And the way it performs, right, that has to be in a specific order, okay? You can't count one, then you count four, you then go back to two. That doesn't work, right? It has to count one, two, three, four, right? So, but Salesforce will not guarantee you the order of execution if you have, say, multiple triggers in place, right? Salesforce cannot tell you which trigger will run which, right? Like if you have four triggers on before insert, there's no way you can guarantee the order of execution, right? And it's not a good practice at all, first of all, to write multiple triggers on the same object, okay? So when you install non-service pack, right? So let me show you the GitHub page, okay? So this is the non-profit service pack. I'll put in the link in the description below, right? So you go to the Salesforce Foundation and non-profit service pack. Now you must be wondering about the licensing aspect, right? Which is very important. I'll just tell you in a second. Let me scroll down. Okay, so non-profit service pack is an open source package, right? So and under the BSD clause license, you can read about it. I'll put the link in the description below if you wanted to read this, with a pint of beer, most welcome to do so. Okay, now how do you install this stuff, right? So when you go here, you have this NPSP. So one of the things you have to understand with a non-profit, right? It will not work with a person account. Okay, that's one of the limitation, right? Read about it. This is one of the limitation I read about non-profit. You know, success pack. So it will not work in conjunction with the person account. And so, yeah. Okay, so you can go to this NSP installer, right? And you can install. You go to install, it will install it, right? It will take some time and it will install it for you, okay? And if you don't want to do that, you can Also install, there's an education package tool. So for instance, let me go back to Salesforce here. So you can install education data architecture one, which also install this table driven, package for you. But that being said, we don't want to do that, right? Because you don't want other stuff getting installed when your requirement is only to work with the trigger. So you have to pay special attention to that. So that's why NPSP is the cleanest and the lightest version of it. So non-service pack is pretty cool, right? If you're someone working on a non-profit, right, non-profit side of the business, then this is very handy. Okay, all right. So let's go back. And so when you install this, right, it will automatically install a trigger for you behind the scenes. So for instance, let me go to account, right? I don't have to do any installer, any trigger. So I say TDM account, and you can see that it's a managed package, right? So all you have to do, you build a controller, build a handler on top of it. Okay, so I'll show you how it looks like. So see, like I said, it comes pre-built for account, for contacts, and other custom objects. And other objects. But for all the objects you build, right? Say for instance, say beer object or other objects, you have to write your own trigger. And I'll demonstrate how to do that for a custom object as well. This is really powerful, right? In my opinion, I really love this framework. It's amazing. Okay, so I have this. Say for instance, I wanted to write a count trigger. Okay, so I install this package on top of my developer org. Okay, now this got installed, so I don't have to worry about the account trigger. You forget about the account trigger code whatsoever. All you have to worry about to focus on your business logic, how you want your operation to be like, what your before insert looks like, what your after insert looks like, what your before update looks like, right? So let's dive into, and I'll show you what I mean. So I know it might be confusing if you are someone who is starting out for the first time, and you might think, why the heck I'm talking about this framework, right? Like I said, if you're working on, NSP, nonprofit space, then this will be very handy for you. And I have to cover that part, right? So we can't ignore nonprofit side of things. So, and a table-driven trigger management is one of the biggest aspects of it. And it's shame if people don't know about it, right? It's amazing concept. Okay, so it's going to take a while, but it's going to start. Okay. So I've written an account trigger. Okay. Um, so this is how I written a trigger. It's an old. So what I did, I extends this NSP dot this runnable mutable, right? So and then I overridden a run method, so which contains the list new, which is mostly your trigger dot new, right? And this is trigger dot old, and these are the trigger actions like is insert, is delete kind of stuff, and schema description like object, and the DML wrapper. Okay, so all I'm doing here, very simple code. Okay, so trigger.new, right, which gives me trigger.new, right, the new trigger handle. And say in this case, we're dealing with account, and I'm checking if it's before insert, right, action. And all I'm doing to set this, active to true, and number of location equals to 10. Okay, so this is what I'm doing. Now, now here comes the magic. Let's say another development team, right, decides to write another before insert trigger, right? Usually, right, some, people, like I said, like it's a very bad practice for you to write multiple triggers on the same object, but we are not writing multiple triggers here on the same object. Trigger is already there, okay? So we are not writing multiple trigger. Don't get confused. So I have this trigger manage code, right? So if you go here, go to trigger here, there's only one trigger. Okay, so what we're doing, we are writing an extensions of it. Okay, so let's say I've written this code, okay? Very bad code. As you can see, it's crap, but that's besides the point. So then another development team writes another crappy code, okay? So let's say they wanted to write another before insert trigger, okay? Let's say for whatever bizarre reason, okay? Now they say, in first instance, right? I want, before insert to get fired, and then, and it updates to 10, and then in the second it updates to 2, right? So we got 2 before insert code. It doesn't make any sense, right? But the reason why I wanted to show this code, to show you the order of execution, okay, how it works. So it becomes very clear, right? So it's pretty much the same code, copy pasted the same code. The only thing is that I changed this to 2, okay? Now we got a setting here, okay, which helps you to control the order of execution, okay? Now you go to the org, and when you install this, right, when you install it, there is something that get installed that's called trigger handlers, okay? Right. So you go to trigger handler. So I've created 2, 3. So first is the count. So what do? You go to new, right? If you don't do this, the trigger won't get fired, okay? So I've done this. Okay, let me, let me do delete. Okay, why not? All right, let me do delete. And let's go to account. Okay, let's go to account. See, now what we have here, we got a trigger that's in place, which is a manage object, which contains, code, manage code. And I got the trigger, before insert code, right? So I want this code to be executed, right? Now, but there's an option here, trigger handler, which is a setting, and it contains test trigger handler. Don't worry about it. I'll explain you after 10 minutes the reason behind the test trigger handler there. Right. So we got no code configured anywhere except in the developer console, right? Okay. Now let me create an account here. So we got to create an account. So just put yada yada, blah 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 blah, whatever. Oh, even blah blah I can't spell properly. Oh, yeah. Okay, active. I don't care. Number of locations, right? I don't care. So I'll just save it. All right. So now let's look at the details. What's the active status? See, number of location none, active none, right? So that means this part of the code is not getting executed, right? Especially this part of the code. Okay, now I want this part of the code getting executed, right? So this is something I will call as a bypass trigger framework. So even if you're an admin, right, you can still control the execution of the code, which is the best part of this framework, right? I mean, say for instance, you are an admin, you don't have access to the developer console, right? Or say for whatever reason you don't have access to the code, right? It gets restricted to you based on your, profile. So what happens is, or let's say, I mean, it's not restricted. You don't know how to code, right? In most of the cases, I've seen that admins don't know how to code, right? Let's accept the fact, some people came from business, functional consulting background. They don't know how to code, okay? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. So just for the sake of argument, let's assume that. So the person don't know how to bypass a trigger using a code, right? I mean, if you look at this code, right? I mean, they will like, what the heck is it, right? It's too complicated, all right? But in this case, they can control it using the interface, the user interface, which is fantastic, right? Now, let's say I'm an admin. I pretend I'm an admin now, right? Now, I wanted to activate this piece of a code, right? So all I do, I go to new. So I'll ask the developer, hey, can you give me the class name, right? So developer gives me the class name, account trigger. You can give a meaningful name, right? So I'll put it here. And all I need is the account object that anyway admin can get it, because obviously admin will know, right, where to go and find the API name for an object, right? Otherwise, he or she is not an admin if they can't find out this information at least. Okay, so I agreed that before insert code needs to be executed. See, you can pick and choose which part of a code you want to be executed, right? So which is the beauty of it. If you don't want after insert to be executed, then you don't have to choose it. So in this case, I want the before insert code to be executed. Okay, so I'll just do here, save. All right, so I'm an admin, so I did this. Right now, let's see if I can create an account. So I will delete this blah blah whatever, right? And I'm gonna do create new, and I just say blah 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 blah, and I'll do save. Okay. So I'm performing as an admin now, not as a developer. So I go to develop details here. You see, the trigger got activated. All right, now let's say a developer comes to you and say, look, I got another code. I wanted to fire 2 times before insert code, right? I wanted to do this and I wanted to do that. So for whatever reason, right? I know it's a very stupid way to do things, but just assume that for a second, right? Another developer, another vendor, from whatever company, did another piece of a code which they wanted to run one after another. Okay, they say this account trigger code should run first, and then this code account trigger second should run second time. Okay, so what the admin will do usually go to here, create this here, and put it here, put it here. Now watch. Okay, before insert. All right, now let's save it. Okay, now there is something called order of execution. Okay, so as I mentioned, this should be executed first. So you go here, and there's something called load order. Just put it 1 here, and you go here, and just put account second trigger, and just put 2 here. Okay. Now what will happen, right? When the code will run, right? It will trigger this one here. Okay. And it will, instead of putting this to 10, it will put this to 2 because this is the code that's running the last, right? So, you know what? Let me say, let's say I want, the account's second trigger. Oh no, you know what? No. I want this code to be there so that I can show you the order of execution. Because what I'm going to do once I run this code, right? I will change to swap the order and then show you how it works. Okay. So what will happen, right? The number of location will set to 2 because this is a code that's running the last, right? Because I've set the load order details to be to 2, number 2. All right. Okay. Just delete. Okay. Tagging is on time. I'll go to new and I'll say blah blah blah. My favorite account. Blah blah blah. It's my favorite account. I just to save. It's funny though, because it reminds me of somebody. Blah blah. All right. Okay. Never mind. Sorry, digress. Okay. Number of locations is set to 2. So this is because this part of the code is running second. Now I'm going to swap the order here. I'll make this account trigger second as first, okay? And I will make this account trigger as second. So what will happen when you create an account, right? Instead of setting this to 2, it will set it to 10 because this part of the code is executing last, right? Okay, sounds good. I really love this framework. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, that being said, I do love Financial Force Lib as well. So, these two are great, amazing. Okay. So I'm gonna create it here and just say blah blah blah. right? So I'm gonna do save, and so we have number of locations set to 10 because that's great. Oh, sorry if you're hearing noise of the bike. I don't know. It's just shitty thing. Every Friday, some freaking races they race around, but it's all right. Never mind. Right. Sorry, I digress. It's annoying because when I want to record exactly the same time they wanted to whore around with these bikes, but yeah. Okay. Uh, yeah, right. So this is number of locations and active. So this is great. Now, you remember I talked about before about this, what is this test trigger handler? So what I did, I created a new custom object just to demonstrate. Uh, if you wanted to do a custom object, how do you write a trigger with a custom object, right? So you go to um, that's why Lord. Like, I mean, I live in a city center, close to city center. That's why the traffic's more. I sometimes wish I go and live in countryside because I just don't like traffic too much. I don't. I like to live in a quiet place. I don't like seeing too many people at the same time. It just kind of suffocates me. So, I'm a very quiet person. So yeah. All right. Okay. So I just say trigger. So test trigger testing is it's just a dummy object I created just to demonstrate. So you go to trigger testing here, and I got a trigger. Okay. So every time you create your own custom object, right? A new custom object, you can't expect the managed package to automatically, get it installed for this. Doesn't want to work. So you have to write your own trigger, okay? And you can write your own trigger using NS, the non-profit code. So, and you can do that. So I've written one, and I'll show you how to write that one. So you got NPSP. So this is how you write. So this is like a normal trigger. Okay. So nothing fancy here, right? And everything there. And then you write this code NPSP dot TDM config API, right? And then run. Okay. Run expects all this param like if before, is after, is insert, right? And expect trigger new, trigger old, and then your name of an object. Okay, so that's all you have to do. Your trigger is sorted, right? Then after that, you have to write your classes like I did here, right? For account, I did right. Override. So it override the run method. It extends, NPSP, and I'm just changing the status to hold, right? I'll just run it and show you. My apologies if it looks very complicated and confusing, but trust me, it's really amazing, right? If you start to use it. So okay, what I do, trigger testing. Okay, so because the reason why I always emphasize on a trigger framework, it helps to develop consistency in the code. Okay, that's very important. You see, code writing is like writing a story, right? Or think about Mozart music, right? I mean, I'm a big fan of Mozart, right? And there are not many Mozarts on the planet, right? There's only one, right? So there's a reason why. Because if you're passionate about something, if you're really interested to write a amazing top-notch code, then you will put an extra effort. I've seen there are a lot of lazy programs out there. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, we are like what 8 billion on this planet, and I've worked with so many amazing programs and so many crap as well at the same time from different parts of the world, right? There's I'm not picking and choosing geographic location. Good and bad programmers come from different walks of life, right? So I've seen people who are extremely passionate, write amazing code, and I've seen people who write, horrible code, right? Even people with 10 to 15 years experience, right? They'll write such a crap piece of a code. I will not like to hire such a kind of person, right? I mean, when I started out, right, I used to write horrible code. I acknowledge that. But I learned over the course of time, right? Because when you start out, you can't blame someone, who's coming fresh out of uni and, saying, oh, he can't write a code. That's fine. You can teach them, right? But after 15 years, you're doing the crappy mistake. That means you haven't learned anything. That means programming is not for you. You are in for a wrong reason. Go and freaking do something else, right? Why wasting someone else's time? Because it's an overhead, okay? If I'm running a company, I don't want a crappy code going into my org, right? Because it costs me money to fix it. So, yeah, sorry. I just hate people pretending them to be a senior programmer, principal programmer, and can't write a good quality code, right? So, all right, okay. So we're gonna do demo and description, test. What I'm gonna do is run, and we'll change this to. This is just a crappy custom object I've written, so please don't blame me saying that. Oh, this object makes no sense. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But I just want to demonstrate how you can write a custom code, um, custom trigger code on a custom object, right? So this is hold, right? Because the code is getting triggered behind the scene. Yeah. So that's pretty much all about it, right? So I've demonstrated you how you can write your trigger, handlers. So you can call it as a handler, right? If you want to call that, you have to extend that, NPSP, TDM, runnable mutable. So, and then you can override and write your logic here. Okay. I do understand. I do acknowledge that it's not like clean like other trigger framework where you have different methods, right? Which is very nice. I mean, I do prefer that way rather than using if else. But that being said, this is pretty amazing, right? The reason why it is cool because you got a control over the way your trigger should run, right? And even you're an admin, you can control it. You don't have to be a developer. It's. I understand that you need to have a developer to write this kind of a code, but once that's written, right, you don't need a developer. Admin can look after it, right? So that's what I'm trying to say. If you wanted to do, data import, right? So you can pretty much, you know, go to the control option, right? The trigger handler. Um, sorry, this one, right? Trigger handlers, and you can control, right? If you wanted to bypass a trigger, you can do that. So yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about, right? And I hope you learned something. If you think this is complicated, I do understand that it's a little bit tricky compared to a simple trigger framework you use. But if you're someone who uses nonprofit, then this is amazing, right? Check it out, read about it. I'm gonna put this GitHub link, right? So what do you do, right? If you wanted to know about nonprofit, I didn't cover nonprofit, right? My apologies. If you're a nonprofit guy and you expected me to do that, sorry, this course is not for that, right? My main intention is to talk about triggers, okay? If you want me to cover nonprofit, I can talk about it, later stage, but not at this part of the series, right? When we are specifically talking about triggers, right? Right. Sorry, I can't speak today. I got a very bad sore throat, so you might have felt, my speech is kind of sluggish. I was supposed to do a podcast today that got delayed. I can't talk very well, right? So as you can see, I got a cold as well, but not COVID though. Yeah, because in my city we got no cases. That's the beauty of living in New Zealand, right? Things are pretty much under control. Yeah, but at the same time, right, we are only 5 million, right? So easy to control compared to if you're, 100 million or, 600 million or billion. All right. So you can go to this user documentation, right? If you're after nonprofit. I don't know why I always call this non-service because I've been doing a lot of service cloud, changes today, and it's keep on going to service. It's all good. All right, so you can read about nonprofit success pack. If there are a lot of great information out there. Yeah, this is what you're after, right? And if you wanted to try out the trigger, you can install it using GitHub. It's pretty straightforward installer, right? You can click here, NPSP installer, and it'll get it installed for you and start playing around, right? It just to see if it meets your requirement, right? Or if it doesn't meet your requirement, then you can look at the other trigger framework I talked about. If that also won't meet your requirement, then there's something exciting I want to talk about, FFlib, right? Which is fantastic. I love that framework. So yeah, stay tuned for the next time, right? Have a great weekend. Adios.